Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to English Story Time with Mark. Today we're going to be reading a story called The Lottery Ticket by Anton Chekhov. It will explore the potential consequences of a lottery winning. So let's see what happens. The Lottery Ticket. John Miller, a middle-aged bank clerk, sat comfortably in his favorite chair holding a newspaper. His wife, Sarah, sat nearby knitting a scarf. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. As John flipped through the newspaper, something caught his eye. "Sarah," he said, "look here. The lottery drawing results are printed." Sarah's hands paused and her eyes lit up with curiosity. "Do you still have our ticket?" she asked. "Of course," John replied, pulling the ticket from his pocket. It was slightly crumpled but still readable. Sarah leaned closer. "Read the numbers. Let's check if we won." John laughed lightly, shaking his head. "Don't get your hopes up. The chances of winning are tiny." Still, he unfolded the ticket carefully and matched the first few numbers with those in the newspaper. "Wait," John said, sitting up straight. His tone changed, becoming serious. "The first three numbers match." Sarah dropped her knitting and grabbed his arm. "What? Let me see." "Hold on," John said, his hands trembling. "Let me check the rest." He compared the remaining numbers and gasped. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice shaking, "we might have won the jackpot." Sarah's heart raced. Her mind filled with excitement and dreams of wealth. "How much is the prize?" she asked. $1 million, John said, his voice barely louder than a whisper. Sarah clapped her hands together. $1 million? Can you imagine? We'll be rich. For a moment, they both sat silently, letting the idea sink in. Slowly, their minds began to fill with dreams of how their lives could change. John leaned back in his chair, a smile spreading across his face. "We could buy a country house," he said. "Imagine a big garden, fresh air, and no noisy neighbors." "And a vacation," Sarah added. "We could travel to the seaside or even abroad. I've always wanted to see Paris." "Paris?" John chuckled. "Why stop there? With $1 million, we could visit Italy, Spain, or even America." Sarah's eyes sparkled. "We'd buy new clothes, fine furniture, and maybe hire a maid. No more cooking or cleaning." "And we could invest some of the money," John said, his tone becoming serious. "If we manage it wisely, we'll never have to worry about money again." Their simple, modest lives now seemed dull compared to the luxurious future they imagined. The possibilities felt endless, and for a moment they were completely lost in their dreams. But as they dreamed, a thought crept into John's mind. "What if the money changes us?" he said, breaking the silence. Sarah frowned. "Changes us? How?" "Well," John said slowly, "money can make people greedy. Friends and relatives might come asking for loans. They might think we owe them something." Sarah nodded. "That's true. We'd have to be careful about who we trust." "And what about you?" John asked suddenly, his tone sharpening. "Would you start spending the money foolishly? Buying things we don't need?" Sarah's face flushed. "Me? What about you? Would you waste it on gambling or silly investments?" The room grew tense. The happy excitement from earlier began to fade, replaced by suspicion and doubt. John crossed his arms. "Maybe we shouldn't even tell anyone about the money," he said. "We could keep it a secret." Sarah narrowed her eyes. "Why? So you can control it all? I have just as much right to the money as you do." I never said you didn't, John replied defensively, but someone has to make smart decisions. Oh, and you think you're smarter than me? Sarah shot back. Their voices grew louder, and the peaceful home they had shared just moments ago now felt full of tension. Both began to see each other differently, as if the money had already come between them. Finally, John held up the ticket again. Let's check the numbers one more time, he said, his voice trembling. Sarah watched as he carefully compared the ticket to the numbers in the newspaper. His face fell. What's wrong? Sarah asked nervously. John sighed deeply and handed her the ticket. We didn't win. I made a mistake. Sarah grabbed the ticket and checked it herself. He was right. The numbers didn't match. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, Sarah leaned back in her chair and picked up her knitting again. John folded the ticket and put it back in his pocket. Well, Sarah said quietly, it's probably for the best. Yes, John agreed, though his voice was flat. He picked up the newspaper, but the excitement and joy from earlier were gone. The dreams, the arguments, and the tension, they had all been for nothing. Life would go on as it always had, simple and predictable. Yet as they sat there in silence, both couldn't help but feel that something had changed. Even without the money, the brief moment of hope had revealed something about themselves and about each other that they couldn't forget. So as we can see, winning the lottery can have all kinds of consequences and not necessarily always good ones. I hope you've enjoyed the story and it will inspire you to read this story or any of the other stories in our series. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day, and I will see you next time.